What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash Podcast, your number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. Today, I'm joined by another fantastic guest, Dan. He is the head of marketing over at Reserve. We're going to learn more about what Reserve is doing when it comes to different things like index DTFs, as well as maybe some of his background in the space as well when it comes to marketing. And some things that they're working on here in the short term leading into 2026. So it'll be a fun conversation. So Dan, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you on today. How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Likewise, me too. So to kick it off, tell us a bit about yourself. I'm sure people would love to know about your background and maybe how you kind of wound up in this industry, in this side of the space. Everyone's usually got an interesting story. What kind of, interested them in this industry, and maybe what was kind of like a catalyst for you to be a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. My DeFi story started in 2016. I was working at a big S&P 500 like data security and insurance company, very rat race type role. And I had a friend that was kind of sitting next to me, and he was like, "Hey, my dad just started investing in Bitcoin. You got to check this out." And that kind of started the rabbit hole of reading the white paper and learning more about it, and then kind of deep diving it. I left that job about a year later and started in like the SaaS startup type world, and was still really deep into crypto and just like buying and trading and learning about it. And then after that, I decided I wanted to pursue it full time and really just thought that blockchain was the future. Started working at an exchange soon after as their CMO, and then have been in DeFi ever since.
Nice. And then what eventually led to Reserve? Was it something that stemmed from working at the exchange, or was it something outside, or what was kind of the initial inception point there?
Yeah, funny enough, I had already been an RSR bag holder from years before I started working here. And I saw the role pop up, and I was like, I still have a bag of RSR staked. I should apply and really check it out. And then after I met with Thomas and Nevin and really got to talking about the protocol and what the goals were, it kind of felt like a no-brainer and the place to be.
So what can you tell us about Reserve in terms of what your guys' core mission is? Like, what do you guys want to do? What problems are you guys aiming to solve in the space? Like, what's your ethos all about?
Yeah, I think end goal, like final end game, would be a world reserve currency, right? And currently we're in the phase of indexing all of crypto. So that's kind of the premise of DTFs, is to index crypto and eventually index the world, being able to put RWAs, any sort of stocks and things like that, all within one individual token, represent an entire basket. So our goal is to fight inflation through these types of mechanisms.
That's interesting. What kind of goes into the thought process there behind indexing more generally? Like, I'm familiar with indexes and what they are. I'm just kind of curious, like, are you thinking like from a crypto perspective, like doing indexing, or like real world assets and indexing, or like, is there like a particular angle there?
Yeah. So currently we are just crypto, right? We're fully on chain, mintable and redeemable 24/7, actually decentralized. As we continue to grow, we'll eventually be able to put securities and stocks and whatnot, those tokenized RWA assets, into DTFs. So current phase is just crypto, but crypto across all blockchains. We're not pigeonholed to one blockchain. We work with Universal to be able to have things like Sol and AVAX or whatever it might be in baskets that also have Bitcoin, ETH, and everything in between.
Okay, interesting. And then what is a DTF exactly? How does that maybe contrast with like a traditional ETF as well? And maybe what makes it different or more beneficial, or maybe some added properties?
Yeah. So DTF, it stands for Decentralized Token Folio. It is a basket of tokens, assets and tokens that are represented by one token. The advantages there are, unlike a traditional ETF, it's traded 24/7. You have 100% of it. It is self-custodied. We do not have custody of it or the underlying assets. You're able to mint and redeem it 24/7. There is also a DAO and governance token in which you could stake, earn portions of the fees, as well as vote on things having to do with the DTF and the basket. So the only thing that's super similar is that it is one asset that represents a basket of assets. Other than that, a DTF is superior because you have true ownership of it. You actually own the underlying asset, and all of the traditional advantages of a blockchain, 24/7, being able to see everything that's happening and that's going on chain, so on and so forth.
Okay. Do you guys have like a particular methodology you follow behind that, like in terms of how you balance out those baskets and like what you allocate to it, or is that kind of depend on the DTF product in particular? Like, I'm just kind of curious, like your guys's plan and method when you guys go about it. 'Cause there's so many nuances. Because this is something I've been learning about a lot more in the space, because I think it's going to be really important for the near future, and it's going to be something I think people get more into over the next couple of years. And there are so many different kinds of nuances between rebalancing and yield, APY, and all these different kind of things you can do with it. So I'm just like curious, like what direction you guys want to take it in terms of stuff like on the back end.
Yeah, so it's largely based off of the product. And to be clear, Reserve is the protocol in which you could launch DTFs. We ourselves do not launch DTFs. We partner with people like CFP Benchmarks, which does the Bitcoin BlackRock ETF methodology, and they're who's doing the rebalancing and managing like how that works. Now, that's LCAP. It's a large cap index, top 10 assets by market capitalization. And then you have baskets like BED, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and yield-bearing USDC. So that one auto rebalances via algo. I think it's monthly, where LCAP is being handled by CFP Benchmarks and that methodology, and that's quarterly. So it really depends on the individual product and the basket and kind of what it's tied to. We have one with Bloomberg, we have one with CoinDesk. So there's an opportunity for people to invest directly into categories like the one with virtuals, where you're targeting all of AI, and then stuff where it's just based off of market cap and kind of following something that's a little bit broader, like LCAP and CF Benchmarks.
And you mentioned some of those partners. I didn't catch them. What were they again?
Yeah.
Bloomberg, Cointelegraph, or
CoinDesk.
CoinDesk, excuse me.
Yeah, CF Benchmarks, and then we should have CoinMarketCap soon next week.
What route do you want to take this heading into 2026? Like, do you want to find more partners and continue expanding different DTF offerings with those different partners? Do you want to branch out into tokenized assets and equities at some point, or how quickly do you want to move that direction, or is it still pretty early?
We're always looking to partner with big players who are serious about building DTFs on the platform. So we are always looking to launch new DTFs, right? It's not something where it's like, okay, we have 10, we have enough, or we've partnered with a handful of people. In 2026, though, I think a large thing that will be focused on is distribution, right? We did a pretty large survey that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks that ties to retail investors, primarily people who know about crypto but aren't holding crypto, and 85% of them are interested in owning an index DTF. The thing is that those people are largely not trading on chain; they are using a centralized exchange. So with LCAP being listed on Kraken, right, Coinbase DEX allowing any base asset to be tradable on Coinbase, things like that help our distribution greatly. And in 2026, I think we're always looking to launch new innovative products, but the real goal is distribution and giving people an opportunity to get broad exposure over time.
Yeah, what more can you tell us about that survey? That's actually pretty interesting. 85% of people are interested in it, but they're kind of siloed onto exchanges, right? So it would be getting them access and finding ways for them to be able to participate in them.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You think about how many people are participating on chain, whether that be just on mainnet base and so on and so forth, but how many people are actually going to dApps and doing things within the giant amount of people that is retail. Most of them are on Robinhood, right? Webull, eToro, E-Trade, so on and so forth. And they're trading the traditional S&P 500 and all of that type of stuff. And if they are getting exposure to crypto, it's usually via some sort of like Bitcoin ETF where they don't have custody over it. They have to deal with the rules of the stock market and securities and so on and so forth. So distribution is definitely key. And I think that we're kind of in this really cool place where going into 2026, we'll also have the opportunity to add securities and RWAs to DTFs. This way they remain truly permissionless and decentralized, and anybody could kind of launch them, right? Imagine if you were like, hey, I want to launch my DTF portfolio, and my family and friends could invest in it. As somebody that's like in crypto, like with the survey, I constantly have, one of the things we asked was like, do you have friends and family invest in crypto? And most people say yes, despite not being willing to trade on chain or being afraid of it or skeptical of crypto in general. So I think distribution will remain king, and kind of this survey that we did, and all of the questions we asked were really geared towards finding out what people want, where they're going to trade it, where they're most comfortable trading it. So it was pretty eye-opening.
Did it ask in particular about maybe why they are so interested in it? Is it just ease of accessibility and having it at their fingertips? Is it wanting like a broader exposure to the market rather than having to like try and pick their portfolio on their own terms? I'm sure there's many different reasons for different people, but I'm just curious if there was any in particular that maybe stood out more than another.
Yeah. So one thing that we did as a part of kind of the broader survey was we had an in real life event at the University of Connecticut where we surveyed a little bit over 500 people one-to-one. And one thing that really stood out to me is people don't want to day trade crypto and have to worry about rugs or something like that. They're much more comfortable trusting a Bloomberg or someone they're familiar with to choose those assets for them, and then they feel as if they're kind of investing alongside them, right? People invest in the S&P 500, but how many people could name 100 companies in the S&P 500? Not very many. I probably couldn't. So it's the type of thing where people just want that trust element, and they don't want to have to deal with it, right? People are always hearing, I made $1 million on this coin, I did this, I did that, and they're excited about it, but the realization is they're hesitant to get involved because they also heard of rug pulls and all of that type of stuff. So they just want broad exposure without having to do a lot of the guesswork.
So what would it take to have your own DTF launch? Like, do you have to be one of these types of companies? Do you have to have like a tremendous amount of resources at your disposal, or could it really be anyone that meets a certain criteria? Like if I at BlockHash wanted to create my own index or DTF, the podcast 100 of the top 100 companies I've interviewed because I think that they're, doing great things in this space, would I be able to do that, or is there certain thresholds that need to be met?
Yeah. So currently, it would depend on a lot of factors, right? Like if initial capital, how it's going to kind of work, size of the brand that we're working with. We're very open to working with brands big and small, though. On the 2026 roadmap, though, will be a form of permissionless DTFs where you can literally just go in and be like, hey, I'm going to make the BlockHash 100 and then just put it together yourself, launch it directly on chain, and there you go, it exists. That's something that will roll out at some point in 2026, but it'll give people the opportunity to now say, hey, I just want to invest in these 5 assets broadly. I want to set up this basket. I'm going to invest in it, and I'm going to tell my friends about it, so on and so forth. And now you kind of create an entire economy of DTFs where people are pairing different things. They're maybe narrative focused, maybe they're just super, super long term. And then as we kind of add RWAs and securities and everything to that ecosystem, now people are really able to get inventive and bring new things on chain.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's something I'd definitely be interested in if I could figure it out. Does it kind of come down to like how much capital you can provide to like a liquidity pool to make that work, or what does it kind of usually take in general? Or do you have to have like a certain amount in reserve, or do you know custodians that do that for a project that's maybe looking to launch a DTF? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things to figure out on the back end.
So it's a conversation that like is had with business development. It's based off of kind of a lot of the factors that you just mentioned. Happy to talk about it, by the way, after this, if you really want to deep dive into how to get that done. But yeah, I think that like maybe we'll have some sort of, you have to have X amount of capital to launch one in the future. I don't know what that really is. Those decisions have not been made. But as of right now, it's more of just like buy each project, right? BlockHash could have 1 million listeners, and all 1 million listeners are willing to put in $10, and then all of a sudden you have a $10 million asset. So it really depends on like audience size, how you intend to market it, and all of that, which will deem it successful or not. But when permissionless is enabled, that really won't matter, right? It'll be, hey, I have $10,000 and I would like to launch a DTF. You could kind of go ahead and do that, and then it would just be on you for rebalancing, managing it on chain. And one of the really cool things is the governance token for each DTF is picked by you. So if it's not selected by you, we use RSR just kind of as the general governance token, and a portion of all of the fees that come from each DTF goes into buying and burning RSR on a monthly basis. So you're not forced to use the RSR token. You do not have to hold a certain amount of the RSR token or anything like that. It is very just based off of the DTF itself, but RSR gains from it directly by becoming deflationary based off of the fee structures.
And then I also want to ask you from a marketing, as a marketer, from a marketing perspective, I'm sure you have an interesting take on this space as well. And I've worked with a lot of different PR and comms teams as well, and different people in head of marketing, CMO type positions. And I'm curious how you tackle this space, like with Reserve in particular, but just in general. Like, there's so many different things going on. There's triaging and crisis, and there's a lot of volatility in the space. What's kind of a day in the life like for someone like you running marketing for a Web3 company like this?
Great question. I think so. For me, I think it's been really cool to watch marketing for crypto evolve over the last 5 years. Right. We went through the phase of strictly KOLs, very pay to play, getting a percentage of some sort of allocation or whatever it is. And as crypto's evolved, so has all of the marketing that happens with it, right? Brands matter, Super Bowl commercial with Coinbase, kind of all of these types of things that keep happening are pointing towards like crypto will have to be marketed traditionally. The same way that it used to be, you could run no paid advertising on crypto. And now you could run paid advertising for certain protocols and products on certain channels versus other channels. There's a lot of nuances to it that for me have been a lot of fun to kind of navigate and then also evolve with. As far as my day-to-day, I am very thankful to have an awesome team, not just from the business development side and leadership side and marketing side, but like people like Sydney and Jake and everybody that I kind of work with directly. Those people, it's just constantly reiterating things, building out campaigns. We work very much on we have a big launch. We're going to spend 3 months making content for it, preparing for it, making sure everything is legally perfect, is ready to go, from landing pages to social assets to KOLs and really everything in between. So it's a lot of honestly traditional marketing, where when I was at an exchange, it was very like listing heavy, and you had a lot of stuff with KOLs and ambassadors and everything was Twitter, where now it's kind of exceeded that scope, right? You have people on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and every other channel talking about it. It's not just crypto Twitter anymore. So for us, we run very much like a traditional digital marketing team. My background is startups and SaaS, and before that, it was big B2B, like business development type stuff with data and whatnot. So this is a little bit more fast paced, but kind of the same general start of digital marketing playbooks that you would run. Crises are a little bit bigger, right? If you get hacked or something horrible happens, it's usually catastrophic and you got to move fast and stuff like that. We're very fortunate to be heavily audited and not had any of that happen ever. So we're hoping that we never have to experience that.
Yeah, hopefully you don't have to. It's always tough in the space when stuff like that happens. But what are some common hurdles that maybe you run into in marketing in Web3? They don't have to be necessarily like crisis based, but like maybe in terms of trying to figure out an audience or connect with users, or distilling down really complex topics and terminology so that they're consumable. Like, it's weird. You have a space that's innovating at such a fast pace and doing things we've never seen and heard of before. And then you have people in the trenches and the degens that probably don't even know how to spell some of the words, but they have capital or they want to participate. And then you have the average everyday person that's just trying to figure out what's going on. So I imagine there's a part of it where you have to break things down, communicate, find ways to distill things. What are some of the challenges maybe from that perspective?
Yeah, I think there's always like regulatory hurdles, like Google Ads, for example, is a really tough nut to crack. You could use certain words, right? I could advertise this, but I can't advertise that. If you're partnering with someone, you can't talk directly about token sales, but you could talk about protocols and yield and kind of what all of it does. So it's always challenging to kind of nuance that, right? Because you're trying to educate an entire group of people about something new, not super easy to use for the most part, and just foreign, just language in general. So that's always super challenging. And then kind of to your point, right? Like there's two very distinct retail groups. There's the crypto degens that are sitting on Twitter, right? They're sniping coins, they're on pump.fun, they're doing all that type of stuff. And then you have people like my friends and family that are like, hey, I own a little bit of Bitcoin on my Coinbase account, and the rest of this stuff looks cool, but I don't know what it is. So you're in this kind of constant mode of education and then shilling without shilling in the traditional sense. So for us, I think education has been challenging, right? DTFs are a completely new financial instrument. And as we kind of grow and get bigger, the awareness will get bigger. And then the need for information and education will continue to grow. So for us, keeping up with that and making sure that we're putting out everything you need is super important, right? If you're someone that's just going to be purchasing LCAP on Coinbase, for example, or Kraken, you're probably not super concerned with like the governance token or the governance structure, or even you may not be aware of what it does for RSR from a deflationary perspective. But it's kind of our job to go ahead and teach you about all of those nuances, and then also what they are, right? Like think about just telling a regular person about DAO governance or staking and gaining yield. Those words individually are foreign to them and the concepts, and now you're trying to do it about your individual product. So I think the biggest hurdle is that. And then of course, distribution, like I mentioned earlier, distribution, I think is just a hurdle, because imagine if right now everyone was just able to trade spot Bitcoin and spot ETH, like in their trading account, like E-Trade, Fidelity, whatever it might be. It would be a complete game changer and people would trust it a lot more. But because of the slowness and all of the hurdles and amount of time it takes to get distribution, it kind of slows things down and cripples the trust to education element a little bit.
Would you want to see DTFs built on reserve that are offered on an E-Trade or a Fidelity at some point, or like a Charles Schwab? Like, do you want to take it like that far to that crowd?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our goal is to speak with institutions, high net worth individuals, RIAs, really anyone who could give their clients or themselves crypto exposure, right? We want to be traded. DTF and ETF should be very comparable as far as the type of, one is for crypto, one is for securities, and eventually DTFs will be for the world. And that's really where we're trying to get to. So yeah, I mean, that's the best case scenario, right? Is you're looking at ETFs and there's a tab where you could click and now it's giving you DTFs. That's where we want to get to.
Are there any friction with the DTFs being crypto based because they're a 24/7 market versus the stock market and the limits that are kind of therefore placed on like ETFs? Like, would there have to be like a certain framework there for some of these legacy companies and platforms to be able to trade it or have it tradable?
Yeah, I think that's a broader question on like how do markets evolve, and do we get a world where securities are traded 24/7 and that's a thing, because that would be pretty cool, or is it something where you just trade crypto 24/7 on that platform and the markets work regularly? I don't know. I think it's going to be super interesting to see where the large exchanges and stuff decide to go with that. Like I said, though, if I had my pick, I would want just markets to be open 24/7 for everything, right? And then be able to index everything. And then DTFs are just a category that everybody trades and deals with the same as ETFs are right now.
Is it the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange that was talking about moving to a 24-hour model?
I think that was the NASDAQ. Don't quote me on that. I'm not positive. But yeah, I saw that. I think that's the best case scenario.
I mean, it's 2025, almost 2026. You'd think we'd be able to find a way in this digital age to trade 24/7 if you wanted to.
Yeah, old habits die hard type thing with with a lot of the stuff with the securities and ETFs.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So what are your guys' plans heading into 2026? Is it more or less the same of continuing the growth and the partnerships and seeing more use cases come alive? Do you have anything concrete that you guys want to do, or announcements, or maybe some new updates, future product offerings, conferences maybe that you guys are going to be attending? What should we know just in general heading into the new year?
Yeah. So LCAP, tradable on Kraken and Coinbase Dex, incredible product, benchmarked by CF Benchmarks and their methodology. We have a CMC 20, the CoinMarket 20 DTF that's going to be coming out in the next week or so to really go out with a bang at the end of the year. You've probably, or maybe you haven't seen on Twitter, people talking about us moving on Binance and kind of some of that stuff. That's kind of all tied together. And then we'll be at Consensus Hong Kong in February and a few other more TradFi conferences throughout the year. I think the best way to kind of check out what we're doing, get information on DTFs, you should just head to our website at reserve.org and like click around. We have a pretty big month and a half ahead of us before the end of the year. And I think that we're going to really hit the ground running in 2026 with more partnerships, more launches, and most of all, more distribution.
Anything happening in Hong Kong? I know that they've been doing a lot on the regulatory front there. I imagine that's probably a fun place to innovate on crypto too.
Yeah, I've done Singapore, I've done Dubai, I've kind of done most of the fun conferences. This is the first time I've ever been to Hong Kong and on to Consensus Hong Kong. Don't really know what to expect. I know that a lot of the people that I've worked with that live in Hong Kong love it. They love the city. They love how crypto friendly it is in general. And it's a hotspot for crypto. So I'm pretty excited about it. And I think from a regulatory perspective, them, much like some of APAC, have just kind of been ahead of the curve.
Yeah, we talk so much about these different, instruments here in Western markets and in Europe, but like we don't ever talk about Asia as much in that sense. Like obviously there's a lot of different great companies and projects and conferences, and there's Token 2049 in Singapore, and like everyone's kind of going that direction for stuff, but we never really talk about how their markets can be so impactful as well. And so I'm very curious to see how things like this, like DTFs maybe, or different regulatory jurisdictions allow certain types of instruments and products in the space to flourish, because I think that could have a massive impact on the market in general that, maybe we're not noticing today, that maybe we'll notice in a year or 2 years. Maybe I'll have to go to Hong Kong. Maybe I'll go with you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have a booth. You should absolutely stop by. And yeah, I think it's pretty interesting to see, like with DTFs in particular, as like, how are they traded outside of the US, right? Like, how does this ETF like product that isn't accessible globally now accessible globally? How does that affect things and that capital that's flowing in, and kind of just how people trade it? Are they going to trade options on it? Or is it going to be something where it's very spot heavy? Who knows? I'm excited to see. And I think that as people become more aware, more educated, and are able to access them easier, we are in a really good position to grow.
Nice, man. Well, that's awesome. Enjoy. Maybe I'll be able to meet you there. We'll see. And this has been great getting to learn more about Reserve and what you guys are working on and on the DTF front. I think it's very fascinating and definitely something we need more of in this space. I think just in general, being able to index more of the space is going to allow a lot more coverage and interest, because there's so much to learn and it's moving and growing so fast. Like, I don't know, in 2021, there was, thousands of different products, and now there's like too many to speak of beyond that. And it's like constantly growing. Like, how do we segment the market? How do we determine like what is, vetted and good to put your money into? How do ordinary investors figure out a way to participate without, again, picking their whole portfolio among the tens of thousands that are out there? And, for legacy partners and companies and institutions to feel comfortable in the space, I do think that these are going to be very important tools. So love the things that you guys are working on. Definitely keep me updated. Would love to do this again in 2026. I'm sure you'll have more products built on top of Reserve and partnerships. And yeah, we could definitely do a follow-up, 100%.
Yeah, would love to do a follow-up. Check out the Vanguard report. It comes out next week. I think it's a really good look into the evolution of ETFs to DTFs and like kind of what people are thinking in general, not just from the echo chamber that is crypto Twitter. It really gives you a good perspective of kind of, okay, people are thinking in this direction, and this is probably something that's going to grow and is worth betting on to some degree. I also think that like for conferences next year, you should absolutely come out. I would also recommend doing like Paris Blockchain Week or something like that. We're looking into those. And yeah, man, we'll talk about the BlockHash DTF too after this.
Sounds good, Dan. Appreciate it. We'll talk again soon, and here after the call too.
Yep. Thanks, man.